Welcome to Madame Raven's. This way to the library. She's been expecting you.
Tu fui Ergo Eris by Paul Stephani. As you are, was I. As I am, so shall you be. Once upon a time there was a small village surrounded by a deep, dark forest. Most people don't know it existed, as stories were told to monsters that would gobble up those unwary enough in a single bite. Everyone knew to stay away from this forest. As it happened, the village knew peace and spent its days happily living their lives until one day such a monster emerged from the forest. The townspeople were shocked as a mass of pink flesh rolled its way out of the woods and towards the town gate. Writhing tendrils shot out and anchored themselves along the stone walls and settled in. Two large, glowing yellow eyes popped out, and a wide, snarling mouth full of long, razor-sharp teeth took shape. It was an evil monster that terrified the whole village. Those who got too close would be caught in its long tendril-like arms, and it would crunch them up with its ever-expanding mouth. Not a trace of them would be left. The villagers were afraid of this monster, and no one would dare approach the gates. Everyone was stuck inside the village, and no one could get in. Once a month, a wagon full of baked supplies and other hard-to-get items would roll into the village to sell in the local shops. Upon seeing this abomination latched onto the village gate, it was clear there was no way to get in. The wagon had no choice but to return to the much larger town, where the king was informed. He was a mighty king, and would not tolerate such a creature to live in his kingdom. So he summoned his knights. The knights eagerly rode out to defeat the monster and gain not only the king's favor, but the notoriety as well. They approached the monster, and one by one charged. "Ha! Take that beast!" they yelled as their swords slashed and their spears flashed. But the monster wouldn't die. Their arms cut right through, no more than a stick skimming through a puddle. The monster let out a bellowing laugh and tossed the knights into its mouth, one by one, even consuming some of their horses. The king heard of their defeat at the hands of the creature. What was he to do? He fretted and fussed and paced the floor, but he could think of no solution. Was there no hope for the poor villagers? He summoned the kingdom's priestess and asked her to give prayer to the doomed. She was a very kind and good person. The priestess accepted the king's request and went to the village gates. When she saw the monster, she tried to convince it, with words, to leave in peace. "Shut up, you! I'm going to eat you up!" The monster didn't listen to a word the priestess said, but she kept trying to convince the monster to give up. "It's wrong to eat people, you know." The monster grew very angry at this and attacked her. Its mighty tendrils of skin shot quickly through her stomach, killing her with a single mighty blow. The creature laughed, choosing not to eat her, but to leave her where she lay as a warning to others, as well as its prized trophy. Though others had tried to confront it, none had made it so angry or frightened as the priestess had. The news reached the king, his people, and the villagers, and they shed tears at the death of the kind priestess. God took pity on them and granted their wishes, healed the princess. The priestess opened her eyes just as she'd done every morning of her life. She now knew what she had to do, as the order came from God himself. though it pained her so. Once more she rose and walked over to the enormous monster. "Fool, you wish to die again?" the monster roared at her. "No, I'm afraid it's your turn this time." The priestess had come to defeat the monster once and for all. As the priestess was very kind, she felt sad about this task, but it had to be done. "Swords and spears won't work. Arrows and bolts will just bounce right off. You can't kill me," the monster laughed. But the priestess used neither sword nor arrow. She chanted but a single spell. Tu fuego, ergo eris. Do you know what happened then? The monster let out a pained cry as its fleshy body erupted in abrasions. Black blood exploded from its wounds as it began to melt and seemingly evaporate. Then, as if it never were, it completely vanished. The villagers were free to use their gate once more. Everyone lavished their gratitude upon the priestess and their god, and they all lived happily ever after. Story number 2, Monster. Once there was a man who was very poor. He grew up on the streets of a great kingdom where he could find neither work nor opportunity, none other than taking that which was not his. In the beginning, it was just for food or coin for food. However, he began to want more. He took jewels, clothes, and when he began to take weapons, he began to kill those who took from him. He was great at not getting caught. He would do his deeds when no one was looking. Then his feet would take flight before the poor souls would hit the ground. No one knew it was him that did these cruel and selfish things, and he would smile to himself. "No one can possibly touch me," he said with laughter. Then he would bring his newfound treasures to his home by a small pond in a deep, dark forest. There were tales of great beasts that roam here, so everyone knew to stay away. This was, of course, not true, as it was mostly him that spread these stories, perfect for a place to hide, undisturbed from those that would convict him. One day as he was walking through a church, brown robes running down to his feet, and a large hood slid high over his head. When no one was looking, he went to take from the donations box, his hands selfishly searching for a few coins that kind people had given, as his gaze fell upon the altar. There was a small statue made of gold of a woman who was very beautiful. He knew he needed to have it, and without taking his eyes off of it, his hand left the donation box, empty. The priestess of the church was still nowhere in sight, and with expert fingers he swiped the statue from its place and placed it in his pocket as he ran off, out of the church and out of the kingdom. The entire road to his hiding place by the pond, he could not help but look upon the beautiful statue. Oh, how it glistened and shined in the sun, and even as he tromped his way through the dark forest, the gleam never completely disappeared. As he walked by the pond, in front of a small wooden house he lived in, still admiring the sheer beauty of the statue, his foot met the root of a tree, and it leapt out of his hand. His prize landed deep in the pond, and he despaired, getting ready to jump in after it as a bright light emerged, blinding him temporarily. When he opened his eyes again, he saw a beautiful woman standing in the water. Her golden hair fell over her chest, and she was the most radiant person he had ever seen. In one hand she held the golden statue that had escaped his grasp, and in the other was an identical statue that was covered in gems and jewels of all kinds, clearly the most valuable item most people would ever see in their lives. "Kind sir, you have dropped a statue in my pond. Was it the pure gold statue?" she asked, holding that hand up towards him. He no longer cared about that statue. He only wanted to line his pockets as much as possible. "Beautiful fairy, you are mistaken," he replied. "Ah, so it was this statue that is so adorned with jewels?" she asked again, holding it towards him. "Beautiful fairy, you are correct. That is the one I dropped," he said, stepping forward to take his new prize. As soon as his fingers touched the statue, a dazzling light once again blinded him, and he could feel his body contort. He screamed and tossed, and even through this all he could hear the fairy's voice very clearly. "You are a cheat and a thief. The greed your life has shown shall now be revealed to the world. Live your life now, alone, as the nature of your selfishness." His pale skin turned pink and boneless, and his limbs and head melted into his squishy core. His large yellow eyes shot open once more, and she was gone. He found he was able to roll himself forward, and he looked into the water and despaired. A blob looked back. He opened his large, sharp-toothed mouth and cried out, "Beautiful fairy, change me back." But his cry was met with deaf ears. He began to roll through the forest. There was a small village nearby. Maybe they could help him. He found the road that went to it, and a man walked in the very direction. "Kind sir," he called out in a gruff voice. The man turned to look and screamed in horror. Instantly the man ran to the village. As the thief rolled along slowly towards him, the man on the road told the village of the horror he'd seen. Rounded up some hunters and even a swordsman, the group went back to where the thing was. They instantly found the thief, and arrows rained down upon him. The thief closed his eyes and waited for death, but it did not come. The arrows bounced off his skin and landed harmlessly to the road. The swordsman raised his arm, sword in hand, and charged. The blade swam through the skin, doing nothing to the thief. As this happened, he noticed the scent of people, and a hunger burned in him he had never known. As if by instinct, tendrils of skin shot out of his squishy pink body and groped at the villagers, pulling them swiftly in and into his mouth, where the monster sank its teeth through their soft skin, crunched their bones, and drank their warm blood. He ate all 4 of them in no time at all, but his appetite still remained. It wasn't enough, and he wanted more. Eventually, he made it to the village gate, and instead of entering, he shot out his tendrils upon the gate and made it his new home. They will have to come through sometime, and when they do, I will eat every single one. At first, people were curious and didn't know what the monster could do. They got too close and were munched and crunched like the others. As fiercely as people attacked the monster, they could do nothing to harm it. The monster spent its days triumphantly eating and sleeping with no care in the world. Even a large band of soldiers from the kingdom stood no chance at all, as they were slaughtered like the rest. After a few days passed, he heard footsteps approaching from the road leading to the village. It was a single girl. There was only one girl he had seen before that matched her beauty, and it made him uncomfortable. He couldn't quite remember who now, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered but what he wanted, and he wanted to eat her. This will be easy, the monster thought, as she walked up with no weapon. Please leave this village, she asked. No, it's mine. Everything is mine. The monster replied, "You don't need these people." "Shut up, you. I'm going to eat you up." The monster didn't listen to a word the priestess said, but she kept trying to convince the monster to give up. "It's wrong to eat people, you know." Her gentle kindness continued to remind him of a past life, one like a dream he could almost touch, but not quite remember. This angered the monster greatly, and he shot out a mighty tendril of skin quickly through her stomach, killing her with a single mighty blow. The creature laughed, choosing not to eat her, but to leave her where she lay as a warning to others, as well as its prized trophy. Though others had tried to comfort it, none had made it so angry or frightened as the priestess had. A while passed before he could fall back into an easy rest. He noticed the girl open her eyes and raise herself up as if merely awaking from a nap. She walked up to the monster once more, making the creatures inside feel like they were tied in knots. "Fool, you wish to die again?" the monster roared at her. "No, I'm afraid it's your turn this time." He stared at her, still seeing no weapon in hand and a sad expression upon her face. "Swords and spears won't work. Arrows and bolts will just bounce right off. You can't kill me." The monster laughed, knowing it was invincible. But the priestess neither used sword nor arrow, but chanted a single spell. Tu fui ergo Eris. As soon as the words left her lips, he felt a great pressure rise inside him, and holes were blown through his soft, squishy body. It screamed in great pain as the flesh began to dissolve, and the last thing he saw was the tears of a beautiful woman. Eyes opened, breaking the eternal darkness. They fell upon people he did not know, and he didn't give it much thought. There was a woman on a bed who cried, and then she was gone. The church accepted the child, who would be raised to become a kind priest. So quoth this raven. Some of you had asked for fairy tales, so here is some wonderful ones I hope you enjoyed, by Paul. This is planned to go out on Tuesday in February. Oh my goodness. Time flies, even as it crawls. I plan on starting the second chapter of the Long Haul series for Thursday, and for next week as well. There's 3 parts. So, more Bear Lair coming up. I hope you enjoyed these lovely fairy tales. I always have a soft spot for them, and thank you so much to Paul for sending them in. Have a lovely Tuesday, everyone. Thank you so kindly for stopping by my chateau, my darlings. It does mean so much to me. Please, if you have not subscribed, as many of you have not, please do so. Give me a like so I know what you would like to hear, and comment. I always love to read your comments. And special thanks to my Patreon and membership supporters. Ciao, darlings.